Today, we're tackling something that affects every single one of us twice a year, and yet somehow always manages to throw our life into chaos. It's daylight savings time. But instead of trying to catch up when daylight savings time hits, we're actually preparing ahead of time. Because, in case you didn't know, daylight savings time hits this Saturday night, aka Sunday morning. And instead of trying to catch up, we're just going to prepare ahead of time. So stay tuned because I'm going to give you lots of tips and tricks to start implementing today so next week can feel much better for you. Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode. I'm so excited to talk to you about daylight savings time ahead of time instead of behind it, because honestly, I'm usually in the camp of it's Saturday and I'm like, oh, the clock changes tonight. And then I'm just realizing it. But this year I'm ahead of the game and I know it's coming. It'll come this week, Sunday, if you're listening to this episode on the day that it releases. And instead of trying to catch up, if we can plan ahead, we're going to feel so much better. But before we get to daylight savings time, I want to let you know that you can still sign up for the spring challenge, which also this is the perfect time for the spring challenge because the spring challenge is all about creating energy, getting back into a routine, and creating strength so that you feel much better during the spring and then also as summer starts to arrive. Because this is going to be working on creating your energy instead of dragging yourself out of bed, which, just so you know, next week it is going to feel like dragging yourself out of bed. Wouldn't it be great if you had other things in your back pocket that will help you create your energy, which means making sure that your meals are balanced throughout the day so that you can create sustainable energy. And then also so you can fall asleep easily at night because your hormones have been balanced throughout the day. We're also going to implement meal timing, which is crucial for sleep and daylight savings time and creating cortisol at the right time of day. And then also your workouts. Instead of hitting snooze in the morning, you're going to be getting up and getting your workouts in, feeling stronger, which will eventually boost your metabolism up so you can burn body fat if that's your goal. So you can head to the show notes or you can go to mindfullywell.com/challenge and you can sign up for the challenge today. All right, so let's talk about that darn daylight savings time. I mean, every year I'm like, this is going to be the last year that they make us jump through these hoops of pushing our clock ahead or pushing our clock behind. Yet here we are, another year, 2025, and we're still doing this monkey dance, and nobody really knows why. There's not really a good answer why we do this. And the truth is, it's actually detrimental to our health. It's not good for our health whatsoever. And if you think about the implications on our health, whatever the benefit is, it's not an even exchange. But yet here we are, we're still doing it. And if I have to get behind a picket fence for this someday, I will do this. I will protest daylight savings time. I'm pretty conservative when it comes to political things, but if I have to get out there and if I've got to rally for this, I will do this and I will do it for you and I will do it for me and for our children so we can stop this madness. Okay, so let's talk about why it feels particularly awful for all people, but also for those of us in midlife. It actually feels a lot worse for those of us once we reach 35, 40, and beyond. Our hormones are already shifting. And circadian rhythm, aka the rise and fall of the sun and the moon within a 24-hour period, is one of the precursors to us creating our hormones. So when that gets shifted by an entire hour, that is going to throw off not only our cortisol and our melatonin, which then leads to fatigue and brain fog and sugar cravings. But then that also is the downfall effect of creating estrogen and testosterone and progesterone. So it throws everything into a muck. And as midlife women, things are already pretty monkey. Things are already like kind of not the greatest, right? So we throw this in there and it just feels a lot worse for us. And our circadian rhythm isn't just our sleep and wake cycle, just that feeling awake or feeling tired. It's also the cycle of our temperature regulation throughout the day, of our digestion, of our cell regeneration, of our cognitive function. And when this shifts by an entire hour everything is feeling behind or feeling rushed, depending on what part of the year we're in. So we are springing ahead. So we are losing an hour of sleep. So everything is pushed ahead. And so our body is going to feel very rushed to try to sync up. And we are not going to be ready to wake up in the morning, and we're not going to be ready to fall asleep in the evenings because for one, the daylight is still going to be like, it's going to be lighter for longer, which, yay, that's fun because we get to spend more time outside. But during the week or so of daylight savings time, it can feel rather disruptive because we are not ready to fall asleep. And the clock is saying you should probably go to bed if you want to get the hours of sleep in. And then the alarm clock goes off in the morning and your body is like, whoa, we're not ready to wake up yet. We don't wake up for another hour. We haven't actually started releasing cortisol yet because it's not the right time. Our bodies don't know this stupid daylight savings time. They don't get that update in the spring and in the fall. They are just living by our own sun and moon cycle and our daily rhythm. So even 1 hour shifting, it actually affects our hormone production. So cortisol, it will normally rise about 30 to 45 minutes after waking, and it will energize you for the day. But when this is being pushed ahead an entire hour, it's going to likely feel like an hour and a half and up to 2 hours until you start to feel energized for the day, until you start to get that natural cortisol response or the awakening response in the morning. So you're going to feel rather groggy, unfocused, rather unmotivated in the morning hours. And especially if you're trying to get your workout done in the morning, this can feel like literally dragging your feet through molasses until your body starts to sync up. And then melatonin usually begins about 2 to 3 hours before your regular bedtime. And after a time change, then your melatonin is likely having an hour of lag time. So when you should be going to bed, your melatonin hasn't caught up yet. And so you're just not going to feel tired at the right time of day. So you want to make sure to provide your body with the tools and the environment to allow melatonin to rise sooner versus instead of later. And I'm going to talk about ways that you can do that this week, starting tonight. And then also insulin sensitivity, this changes throughout the day based on your circadian rhythm. So if you're operating on, last week's circadian rhythm, which is an entirely hour different, and then this week's circadian rhythm, or, also next week is actually when it will happen, then you actually have different insulin releases at different times of the day. And this can potentially trigger more cravings and energy dips. And also the fact that you're just going to be naturally more tired this week, you are going to naturally crave more sugar because a low energy dip, your body will think, how do I get more energy? I get energy from carbohydrates. That's a quick source of energy for me. So I'm going to cue up cravings. So she eats more sugar, she eats more carbs so that I can have more instant energy. So notice that you may feel those urges and those desires to eat more carbohydrates and sweets and things like that, but it's just your body trying to find regulation and trying to find energy. And I also like to lovingly remind you, although we don't want to walk around feeling tired, and I don't think it's normal to feel tired, but also it's not a problem that you're tired. It's not a problem that needs an immediate fix of chocolate and sugar, right? Like you can feel tired and you can do it anyway. I'm not saying like it's okay to feel tired every single day for the rest of your life. That's not my message at all, right? If you know that of me, that's never my message. But maybe this week we just look at being tired as that it's just not a problem. We're just going to keep it as neutral. I'm just going to feel tired this week, and that's okay. And I can still do the things. So why does it feel more disruptive for midlife women than it does everyone else? But also I will say, like, maybe it doesn't feel disruptive for children, but it just really feels disruptive for us because our children are acting different ways during daylight savings time, especially when it comes to bedtime, right? That can be a real struggle. And then waking up in the morning for school. And then also if you have really young children, that just throws it for a loop. You've probably just got your baby to start sleeping through the night, and now daylight savings time hits and you've got to start all over again. I remember those days. But it's particularly more jarring for us, but like physically how we feel it, and our family feels it as well. But it seems like as us as moms and as women that we take on that burden for our kids as well, even though we shouldn't. It's something we tend to do. And so not only physically are we feeling more, but then we also emotionally take on everybody else's physical discomfort in our house. And so it's like triple the amount of discomfort for those of us running a household as well. But some of the reasons why it does feel more jarring for us is that we just already have hormonal fluctuations going on. Even if we're not peri or menopausal yet, you have fluctuations in hormones that as a female, you always have fluctuations of hormones. And estrogen helps regulate your circadian rhythm and your sleep quality. And so if those are being impacted by the sunlight and the moonlight and the time of day it is, you can see that that would throw a disruption in estrogen production. So it is more common actually for women to not ovulate in the month of daylight savings time because it is a stressor to your body and because of your body has noticed shifts in hormone production. And so you may not have an ovulation that month, or you may skip it, or you may have it delayed. And with skipping of ovulation, that will always throw that cycle off, which means it might just feel a lot more jarring than what it normally does. Your PMS might be worse, your bleeding might be worse, your period would be late, or it might be early. It could be kind of all over the place when it comes to daylight savings. So know that if you notice that, that's just your body reacting that strongly to your circadian rhythm. Like that's how strong it is. That's how powerful it is in our life. And it really does make a difference. And then in midlife, we naturally start to produce less melatonin as we age, unfortunately. And you probably have noticed that once you reach your 40s, like it's harder to fall asleep, it's harder to stay asleep, you wake up easily, you toss and turn at night. Those are quote unquote common things that happen, but we don't need to call them normal because there are ways to sleep better in midlife. But that being said, we already have a little bit of a disruption in melatonin, and now we're shifting the time of day that our body is making our melatonin. And so it's going to make it feel harder to fall asleep and stay asleep. Also, keep in mind, if you sleep with a significant other, or maybe you sleep with your children, you're all trying to fall asleep and maybe tossing and turning too. So you're kind of waking up because of them as well. Temperature regulation changes make it difficult for us to fall asleep and stay asleep. You might have night sweats or hot flashes that are already waking you up, and we're just throwing this in the mix to it and adding just another thing for your body to deal with at nighttime. And then also we have an HPA axis, which means it's called your hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis. What that just means is that your brain's perception of stress, and it tells your body that your body is stressed, or it tells your body that your brain is stressed. They talk back and forth. But that means that when your brain perceives stress, it will produce cortisol. And cortisol is also produced with the light and with the sun and the moon. If the sun is exposed, we're producing more cortisol. If the moon is exposed, we're producing more melatonin. And we are very much so influenced by that. And so your body can mistake cortisol production inappropriately during this week or this 2 weeks while your body is trying to re-regulate after the time change. So that just means that you might perceive more stress. You might perceive that like normal, seemingly like not a big deal things have just become like really heavy for you. And it's hard to manage your stress and your emotions, your thoughts, your mental clarity, everything like that, because your body is just feeling more of that this week. So know that all of those things, you can just let them be neutral. They're just something that's going to exist this week while your body starts to resync to the new time. Okay, so what can we do to make this a little bit easier for ourselves? So if you're listening to this on Tuesday or Wednesday or even Thursday or Friday, whatever day you're listening to this, start today. Start today by thinking ahead. Like, okay, I'm recording this at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Thursday. And next week, it's going to be 2 o'clock. So my normal 2 o'clock time of I don't drink caffeine after 2 o'clock. That's my hard stop. I will not sleep at night if I've had caffeine after 2 p.m. That means that actually this week I need to stop drinking caffeine at 1 p.m. Right. So I'm just slowly adding the things that I normally do in a 24-hour period. I'm thinking about it and I'm slowly moving it up to what's going to be my new time. So I'm remembering, okay, it's 1 p.m. right now, but next week it's going to be 2 p.m. So maybe I should actually this week for the rest of the weeks make my new caffeine stop time be 1 p.m. so that my body starts to know like this is when we do things and this is when we don't do things. So the other thing is to think about your meal times. Your meal times are so important on when your body starts to produce cortisol and when your body starts to produce melatonin. And that's why I'm always teaching my clients in midlife, we want to make sure we stop eating 2 to 3 hours before bedtime because we already have a hard time falling asleep and staying asleep. And we also want to make sure our blood sugar is nice and stable when we go to bed. And one of the ways that we do this is that we just don't eat right before bed. And so normally, if dinner is at 6 p.m., we want to be thinking, oh, okay, if it's at 6 p.m., actually next week it would be 7 p.m. So can I start to maybe move dinner time a little bit closer to what it would be? So you would actually be eating just a titch later than what you're eating right now. So instead of 6 o'clock, maybe you start eating at 6:30 for a couple of nights, and that will make the meal timing sync up a little bit quicker and easier once daylight savings time hits. The other thing, the most important thing, is to get your butt to bed a little bit better, a little bit quicker. So it's going to be harder to fall asleep next week. So I want you to start thinking about, can I move my bedtime up? No, sorry. Can I move my bedtime back by just a little bit? And can I move my wake up time back by just a little bit? Now, I get that some of you don't have that flexibility in your schedule. To be honest, most of us don't because we have kids that have to start school at a certain time. We have jobs we have to be at that start at a certain time. But is there any flexibility in there or not? If there is, like 15 to 20 minutes can make a difference for you. So see, how can I adjust this a little bit so that I can start syncing up to what's going to be my new normal next week? And it's not that you need to make that jarring shift all in one day. Like 15 minutes will be more helpful than nothing. And then doing another 15 minutes will be more helpful than doing nothing. But that being said, I know some of you don't have that flexibility. And so if you don't, you don't. But it's something that you can start to bring in to make the daylight savings symptoms, side effects a little bit more gentle for you next week. The other thing is starting to, if you don't already, expose yourself to the morning light. As soon as you wake up in the morning, that is always going to sync you to the day. So once daylight savings time hits, I would say it's a non-negotiable that you make sure and expose yourself to sunlight if the sun is up. If it's not up, getting yourself a sunlight therapy lamp, just a $40 one on Amazon. Literally, if you just go on Amazon and you search light therapy lamp, the first one that comes up is usually called Verilux. It's a 10,000 LUX. That's all you need. It's about $40. That will be the one that you can use at home. So 10 to 20 minutes in the morning, right when you wake up, that will do wonders for your cortisol production at the right time of day because you're going to need to move it up. And that is harder to do without sunlight because your body is still thinking it should be sleep time, but you're waking up already. The other thing is to start drinking more water earlier on in the day. This will not only prevent you from waking up often at night to get up and pee so you can sleep better and more soundly once you finally do fall asleep. Because remember, it's going to be harder to fall asleep when we're losing an hour of sleep, even though we're more tired, right? But it's the sunlight is out later and our body isn't used to going to bed yet. We don't want to be waking up because we have to pee at night either. So try to front load some of your water so you're not trying to catch up later on in the day when really you could be, hit your water goal already and you don't have to be hitting the bathroom later in the day. And then scale back some commitments if you can, right? So remember, your perception of stress is going to be higher with daylight savings time because of the hormonal shifts, because you're tired, and because of your HPA axis is just kind of on more high alert. And so if you can do less, right? Say no to things you don't have to do, especially on the weekends, right? If you don't have to do things the weekend before the weekend of daylight savings and then the weekend after, that can be a great time to recoup and to prepare on the week and then the weekend after to try to catch up on that sleep and to try to have less things to do. Because I really think that if you can prepare ahead of time, so like starting today when you listen to this, you prepare ahead of time, daylight savings will hit. And then that week will be a bit of a struggle. Even by preparing, it still will be a little bit of a struggle. But then if you can really seal it up by that weekend, catch up on sleep and say no to extra things, you're going to be good to go by the next week. You're not going to still be on that struggle bus. So say no to things that you don't actually need to be doing during the daylight savings adjustment period. Stick to a very strict caffeine protocol. So you can go ahead and have caffeine when you wake up in the morning, as long as you're having some food with it, ideally, and then and some water. I would say I would give you a little bit more leeway on the week after daylight savings time to have caffeine when you wake up. There's a lot of, talk out there. You shouldn't have caffeine when you wake up, and you really shouldn't. But I would say this week, it might actually help you create cortisol earlier on in the morning, which is ideally what you want to do. So if you need that for a little bit of a buffer, go ahead and do it. You have my permission to have more caffeine this week in the morning, but we are cutting it off earlier. And so, like I said before, my cutoff is 2 p.m. I would say during daylight savings time week, like when daylight savings has actually hit and I'm trying to kind of adjust my 24-hour rhythm, I would move it up to like noon so that I am really have like no caffeine in my system when it's time for bed, because I'm already not going to feel tired and it is going to be lighter later. We're struggling against those things. So the less caffeine I have in my body, the better. I would move that up to noon. The other thing is like you're going to feel more tired the week after daylight savings time. So try to do little exercise snacks. And especially if you have been skipping workouts because you're just very tired in the morning, you can't seem to get up and get your workout in because you're just tired, right? Because of daylight savings. Do exercise snacks throughout the day. So that means go for a walk several times a day, especially if the sun is out. That's going to be your number one thing to help you generate energy and to help resync to the time is to get out and get a walk in. So do that like 3 times a day, especially after your meals. That's a beautiful time to get a walk in and keep them like 10, 15 minutes. That's all you really need to do to generate that energy and to resync. And you can also do other exercise types of things. So do push-ups in your office, do squats in your office. You can do some jumping jacks if you don't like have people below you, or if you do, that's cool too. I don't care. But find ways to move your body throughout the day that will help you create the energy you need without adding in added sugars and things like that. And then another thing that I would do is like shut those screens off, right? You already got the sun and the time working against you with daylight savings time. You got to shut off the artificial lights in your eyes as well later on in the day, because those definitely play against you falling asleep and staying asleep, because those lights produce cortisol. And we're trying to get rid of cortisol at that time of day. And your body's already lagging behind. So we've got to shut those screens off. I would say make your curfew earlier than what it is. So for me, I say 1 to 2 hours before bed, no screens. And so for you, if that is what you go with as well, for sure, maybe 2 to 3 hours before bed, you have no screens so that you can fall asleep easier. And then as far as other light exposure in the evenings, one of the things that I find very helpful is to shut off overhead lights in your house after dinner. So once you've had dinner, go ahead and walk around, shut off all the overhead lights, and then turn on lamps only. Now, sunlight is okay to come in because your body always knows what to do with natural sunlight, but it doesn't always know what to do with artificial overhead lights. So we want to shut those off and then just turn on warm amber lights, because those can help produce melatonin instead of cortisol. And then you don't need to shut the shades or anything like that when it comes to sunlight in your house in the evenings, but go ahead and turn lamps on. And that is one that's like a habit that you can just also get into. That way, when the sun starts to set, you already have that nice calm amber lighting going on in your house, and you don't have the overhead lights going on either. And then the last thing is to close your kitchen once you're done eating. So no eating into the evening hours. That's going to help your body produce the melatonin it needs to fall asleep and stay asleep, instead of adding cortisol to the mix because you've been eating into the evening hours. You want to make sure and close the kitchen, which means you shut off all the lights and wipe the counters, all that. You're done. The kitchen is closed. You don't go back in there and start looking for snacks after dinner. You leave it as it is. Okay, my friends, that's what I've got for daylight savings time. Go ahead and take what you want from this episode, leave the rest, but I would start preparing before instead of after. For one, I'm just really proud that I have thought about this an entire week before daylight savings actually hits. So yay for me, and also yay for you, because you are ahead of the game already, and you're not going to be sitting on your couch on Sunday thinking, oh crap, now we have to try to get to bed, and these kids are not tired at all and they're running amok everywhere. So, all right, my friends, good luck to you with daylight savings time. I hope it is gentle on you, and I will see you next week.